Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Lavella McGarry, and with me on today, my special guest is Coach Tahkyra. I call it TK Terrell. Welcome,
Hey,
welcome, welcome.
everybody. Hey, thank
Yes,
you.
you're welcome. Please, for those that are now tuning in, chiming in, that will be listening to the replay, type hashtag replay. But I'm telling you, get a friend, share the link, get someone to be able to hear this message on today. And our topic on today is literally dealing with one's past self, bringing
Mhm.
or giving or releasing or now even facing the grief of the loss of your past self, the grief of the loss of your past self. And again, thank you for joining us on yet Soul Rehab. What is Soul Rehab? Rehab is dealing with transformational healing or a path to transformational healing with the crevices of your mind, crevices of your soul, crevices, or dealing with the heart, but in the
Mhm.
path to transformational, your transformational journey. You have got now to deal and or face yourself in this path, in this journey is you versus yourself. So you will deal with the narrative of the old, the narrative of what they say, they say, everybody said, but now you got to deal with what you say. And now your voice, your sound, your language have to override the narratives of those that told you will be amount to nothing, be nothing, you can't do nothing. So again, that's
Mhm.
what it's called, soul rehab, a journey to what self transformation, bring healing and restoration and reconciliation
Right.
to your story. So I guess tell someone, tell a friend, share the link. Thank you for joining us again. Coach TK, tell us a little bit about yourself, your coaching business. I mean, it's a lot,
It's a
but tell us
lot,
who
right?
you are.
It
Yes.
is definitely a lot. But hey, everybody, thank you for joining. Thank you for Dr. McGarry, who's my mentor, for affording me and allowing me this opportunity. So a little bit about me is I practice as a licensed clinical therapist for it's almost 6 years before I transitioned into wellness coaching and visionarity. And so, what visionarity is, it takes the vision. So, I combine faith and counseling principles, psychology, and I bridge the gaps because I think a lot of times we've been that woman who's been bent over in life, right? Bent over, been carrying burdens, carrying different things, carrying her trauma, carrying depression, anxiety, carrying just feeling stuck in her life. And she needs that
Yes.
additional push where it's not only where we're talking about the counseling part, the trauma work,
Mm,
but we're also doing the work of the soul, your will, your
mm,
intellect, and your emotions. You may be solid in your faith, but because there are still wounds that have been left unaddressed, it becomes
mm.
difficult to get further in life. You got a wound
Yes.
in your soul, but you're good, you're solid in your spirit. Well, you're not going to be as effective. And so, what I do, what God has given me a vision to do, is to bridge that gap to help women get unstuck, move forward, create momentum, and really walk in their ideal vision, the vision that God has for them, and the vision they have for themselves, consequently.
And I'm
That's what
glad
I
you
do.
said that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm glad you pointed out to dealing with the spiritual part because that's what we tend to do based on our
Mm-hmm.
relational part. We will cultivate and nurture the gifting or the spiritual part of us, which brings illumination and cause one to now grow, evolve, but yet neglect the soul, which is the
Yes.
mind, the being. And that's why we now look to, and I'm using you this way, we look to the creator for healing, forgetting that we play a part or we are also responsible for the process of our
Mm.
healing. And so again, and then we look forward to healing in a sense of deliverance in presentation of self. Here I am, but do not want to take the steps to go to the process of the delivering of the soul. And so this process is detrimental, is pivotal,
Mm-hmm.
It takes principles, it takes strategy, but it also takes application. And at the end of the day, you still have to look and deal and face yourself. So I think when you said that earlier, what came to me is it's easier for us to cultivate yet the natural, the spiritual man. But when it
Hmm.
comes to dealing with the soul, we don't like what we see.
Yeah.
It hurts, it agonizes because we see pain, we see trauma,
Mm-hmm.
we see
Mm-hmm.
neglect, we see rejection, and we don't like what we see. So we run from ourselves. So, what's your
Yeah.
thoughts on?
Oh, you hit it right on the head for me. Even in my own personal life, right? Because I can't
Mhm.
speak for everybody else, but I
Yes.
can speak from my experience personally and from the experience of the countless number of women that I've
Mm,
helped who believe in God, who have
yes.
been sure that God told them something and it
Mm,
didn't happen and it left a wound in their soul.
yes.
It left
Mm,
a mark on them because what happened, and this is speaking for me personally, what
yes.
happened was I know I heard God, but then because there was some unaddressed trauma,
Mm,
it didn't allow for me to trust myself. And so
mm,
when it didn't happen, not realizing that other people also have free will in the matter,
yes.
that there's people are able to make their choices and their decisions as well, it became a reflection of me. I internalized it. And so then
Mm,
my thought processes, my mindset, my soul was grieved. My spirit was like, I'm still going to trust God. I'm going to still do what I need to do. I'm going to still pray and I knew all the things to do, but I was not whole in my soul.
mm.
And so when you say that, it 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 really makes me think of that. How many of us are walking around with band-aid on top of band-aid on top of band-aid when
Mm,
what we really need to do is we need to go back and look and see that issue for what it is so that we can heal it. We can't ignore if we don't acknowledge it, we cannot heal it. You cannot heal what's not revealed. And as long as you continue to neglect yourself in that area, that you're just gonna keep walking around with band-aids, bloody band-aids, coagulated hearts, heart
yes.
issues.
Mm. So could it be based on them patching? And I said them because we've done it so naturally, not realizing that we are administering healing by patching a wounded, an old wound versus on letting it heal. So because that wound just keep getting punctured, and could it very well be that we cover the wound because the wound speaks or is a reminder of that pain, of
Yeah.
that timeline, of yet the mindset. And here comes, or thus the beating up on oneself. All the signs were before me, but I neglected the signs. Why didn't I run? Why didn't I escape?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I go forward? And thus all these questions of why. And could it be that they're running from that version of themselves? So it's easier to administer that band-aid to cover what reminds one of the pain or of the agony.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think that when we put the band, it is that it's, but sometimes I also think it's not just a reminder of what I've been through. Sometimes I think it's also a fear of who I am when I'm healed,
Mm,
because a lot of times we've we've integrated the narrative of our trauma so much into our lives that if we take that narrative away, then who am I?
yeah.
So it's easier to put a band-aid on something that I'm comfortable with. I've learned to walk with this limp. I've learned to exist in this state. And so you're asking me to do, I've seen this before with my daughter, right? She hurt herself. And even though she was completely fine, she still walked kind of funny for a little bit because there was this fear of, oh, if I step on my leg the right way, if I put all my weight on it, am I going to fall? Am I going to crash? But she was completely fine. So sometimes I think that there's a fear of Who am I when I don't have this narrative running my life?
Come on.
Who am I when I'm healed?
Mm.
Who am I when I've really grieved and buried that part of me? And I wouldn't even go as far as to say bury. Let me restructure that. Who am I when I allow that part of me to grow up? When I tap into the essence of time, come out of the time loop. Who am I when I'm grown up? When I allow myself, I give myself permission to operate at that level of healing and wholeness. Who am I then? So my question is it really a function of me being afraid of who I see in the mirror, or is it I'm afraid of the vision of myself healed?
Who I'm talking loaded.
Loaded.
Loaded. It's this right there. Right? What you just said is loaded. I could go so many places with that. So I'm just trying to restrain myself right now. So when you talk about your daughter in a sense of she was no longer in pain, but she still was limping, her mind, her thoughts adjusted to the pain. And that's what we do. We adjust
Yes.
to the pain and then it becomes our norm and it overrides the reality of who we are. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us adjust to the pain as a way to hide behind the pain because we don't want to deal with the reality of who we are. Is easier. It's easier.
Yeah.
And now going to when you said dealing with time, oh, that right there was so loaded because what I saw was not only do we deal with time, but we pick and choose the sector or cycle of time that we want to give, like you said, keyword, permission to give access to the identity of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so dealing with the pain, we still deal with, we either one cover it is in our subconscious, we suppress it, or we've learned to exist, like you said with your daughter, adjust to the pain to the point where we impact it and it's now suppressed. And now because we've
Mm-hmm.
learned to exist, we are now moving with a new normality to that till we have become numb to the pain or to the grief. So, again, for those that are joining us on today, we're talking about grieving your past self because as you grow, evolve, you are now learning to maneuver or learn to tap into the new version of yourself. So, there are some
Mm-hmm.
narratives that you'll have to cancel out, some cycles that you will have to cut and sever, and some contracts that you have made based on agreement that now you will have to cancel based on the new version, the new law principle, the way of living, the way of functioning, the new language that's overriding who you are. So we're talking about TK is coming with it. I see her. I see her. We're talking about grieving the past self
Mm-hmm.
or your past self. What's your thoughts?
I'm like, she been listening to my stuff. Because I use that language with my clients all the
Yeah.
time. Part
Mm,
of grieving my past self really involved not just changing the language in terms of what's coming out of my mouth. I had to
yes.
change how I lived. And I had to come out of agreement, right? Because I say this all the time. I said, some of us, we create internal vows, we create laws on the inside of us that we live by. And those laws were really a hit out on our purpose and our destiny because we don't allow God the room that's necessary for
Mm,
him to breathe, for him to grow us. For so
yes.
I made up in my mind, I'm not going to do that anymore. And so when I grieved, when I allowed that process of grief, because grief is a process, it's not a one-time event, it is a process. And so when I allowed that facilitation of grief, I had to break and sever the contract, sever the hit out on my purpose, and realize that it is my destiny to walk as a whole and healed woman. I'm not supposed to be walking like this. And so I had to realize that there were some things that I said I would never do. That God is like, yes, you will.
Yes.
Dreams, visions, things that I wrote a contract within myself, I would never do because I never wanted to face that type of pain or rejection again.
Mm. So, what would you say to those that have lived and laid down their lives for others, and now, because when we talk about changing your lives, it sounds easy saying it, but now to, like you said, change your way of thinking, your thought process, now changing the principle of the law that you have lived by, because you have lived. And let's face it, the way that you are thinking or processing, this stems from childhood into your adult life, and then from your adolescence. Now you're either married in a relationships, and again, here you go adjusting, and here you go giving, surrendering, rendering your life, your will, your power, your reason, your sense of being, denying yourself over and over and over, until when it comes to you, it's like, where do I begin, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
You have the energy to help to shift everybody's world or build their world, help them build their empire. We call it labor, and or build themselves. When it comes to you, there's no energy, you're tired. Where do I begin? Because the truth be told, when you look at yourself, what version do you see? Is it the young adult, the childhood, the adult? What timeline do you see? Or are you looking at crevices, holes? You don't even know who you are anymore, and you're now going back into a timeline to literally identify with an old
Mm-hmm.
version of yourself that has been your identity for the last 5 years. You don't know who you are. So what do you say to ones that's trying to those that are trying to identify? Because you used the word earlier, and all I kept hearing is we train ourselves to breathe. And now when you have to take that USA, get that USA moment, you don't even know how to breathe because you've been suffocating. What if everybody's lifeline was a source of you breathing? And
Mm-hmm.
now you've cut off what's familiar, and you've cut off what gave you a lifeline. So now you have to learn how to breathe again.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to those that,
Mm-hmm.
what would be a starting point for them? How do I begin? Where do they start?
I think that when we start, you got to recognize first by that the lifeline was cut.
Mm,
And I think we are so used to being pulled in so many different directions
mm,
that feels like the absolute norm.
mm,
Being pulled at, being suffocated in that way. And so it's almost like, because like what I'm seeing is a baby in a birth canal. And you've just
mm,
been in that birth canal, and you've been attached to your mother's womb. You've been attached to the placenta, the all of the stuff that that is necessary
yes.
for you to breathe while you're in utero. Well, here you are in a birthing process, and you're being pushed out, and you got to gasp for air.
Mm,
Can you rely on yourself to recognize, one, that my body is fully capable of taking the breath that it
mm,
needs without being attached to everybody,
mm,
without being attached to people, without being pulled and distracted by everything that my body's. So the first thing to do is learn to connect with yourself.
mm, mm, mm,
Trauma, taking care of everybody, expending yourself in that way, being suspended in time. What it teaches you is to be dissociated, to live a
mm,
disconnected life. So the
mm,
trick is not balance. The trick is integrating my life in such a way where I'm learning to breathe.
mm,
I'm connecting with myself. Even if I don't like who I am, I deserve to be connected to who I am.
mm,
Can we connect with ourselves first? Because you know how to connect to everybody else. But do you know what it means for you to really connect with yourself? It's amazing to me, Dr. McGarry, when I'm working with my clients and I ask them to take a deep breath, they don't know how.
I don't know. Mhm,
They literally don't know how.
mhm,
They will do what they've always been doing, what they've been taught to do. And I have to usually tell them, I say, okay, put your hands, gently behind
mhm,
on the back of your neck, like this, but behind
mhm.
your head. And I tell them to breathe in. Some of them get lightheaded, some get dizzy. And they said, Tahkyra, I've never felt that amount of release. I said, because you have not been breathing.
Come on.
You have not been breathing. This is you connecting to yourself. That's where to start. Connecting to yourself, because you can't heal anything. Nothing can be healed if you still live a dissociated, disconnected life. Can you connect to yourself?
And when you said that, what came to me is, and we've all been there, done that, that some run to the creator as a way or a means to breathe, not realizing that they are
Mm-hmm.
hiding in the weight of the glory because they don't want to deal with themselves, or they don't want to deal with the pain. And when you talk about breathing, and that's where the oxygen comes in to help one to breathe.
Yeah.
And so one don't know how to find or locate that oxygen because they've been existing or in the world or an environment for so long,
Mm-hmm.
is that that's all they know. So you now bringing that help, let me help you, let me be that lifeline, let me be that life coach, let me be that voice that awakens, let me be that voice that shifts, let me bring that voice that intercept time for you.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot recognize the intercepting or the shift based on their senses being dull or pain has numbified, and
Ugh.
they can't think yet or to recognize help is here. I
Mm-hmm.
said that because based on pain or a heartache or heart pain, we could tend be grieving and not realizing that we are grieving. We're grieving that old loved one. We're grieving the love or the memory of the one that loved us last. We're still grieving grandma and grandpa. Why? Because they protected me. They shielded me. So you're still grieving, holding on to the
Mm-hmm.
memory that kept you safe. And without that memory, because that memory is also a shield. And if that shield is removed, you got to deal with the world, and you're not ready to deal with the world. So now here you come. You got to go back into your shell, which is the memory, because that memory, that love, that person kept you safe. So I said that to say this: a lot of us are walking in existence in survival mode, and we are
Mm-hmm.
existing, but we are grieving and not realizing that we're grieving parts or versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
So
And
how
that's,
can we go ahead?
I was gonna say, that part is real though. We
Mm,
use the language all the time. Part of me feels like, part of me thinks that, part of
mm,
me is that part is real. I'm not saying you got multiple personalities, but that part is real. That's why I carefully chose the word integration, because there's a part, that part of you, just like you said, is stuck in a time loop and a memory that has not been processed. It simply hasn't been processed. It hasn't been talked about. And so guess what? Every time you trigger, every time you
come
are
on.
thinking about something, every time something triggers that, you go back and replay that time loop as if it's
Yes.
happening. That's why
Yes.
one of the tenets of PTSD and folks who have trauma is they feel like they're living that experience all
Mm,
over again, because that part of them is it is. And
mm,
so when I'm grieving, because there is a thing such as traumatic grief, right?
yes.
When I'm grieving, I'm reliving that if I don't give myself the space and the time to adopt and adapt to new information, and I don't give myself
Mm.
space and time to adapt and adopt a new me, because I'll never be the same. I'm not going to be the
And
same person.
true, but then what happened if they're not ready because the emotion of anger gave them an identity, and was it also fueled them to be the person that they know of today? What if the lie or the myth of a story or the emotion of pain and agony was again one that kept their posture, and also
Mhm.
caused them to identify who they are, why? And when you start dealing with truth, a lot of them can't handle the truth because they have held on to that denial for so long, not realizing is denial. That when you start dealing with the truth of the reality of the picture, it's like they don't want to hear it. Why? Because they have to let go of something. let
Mm-hmm.
go of the pain and let go of the narrative and let, because there's a void. So now you have to quickly replace that void.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been telling me that I've been thinking this way and I'm believing this way for so long. So is there another way? Yes. But are you ready to let go? Are you ready to hold on to something new that will give you a sense of knowing and also cause you to tap into the other cut side of you?
Yeah.
So when you said that, we just like we say, we are ready for love, we're ready to move forward. But like you said, the language of it, but we have to go to the preparation. And that's where the accountability comes in, because one
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go to the preparation. I'm ready to be married. I'm ready for my husband. I'm ready for my boo. I'm ready for the next. I'm ready for wealth. I'm ready for the next. But what about the steps to prepare? And what about accountability? And in reality, I do think that they have accountability partners, but they're just not ready for the next. Why?
Mm.
Why do you think they're not ready for the next?
I'm gonna put it to you like this, and this is tight, but it's right. Okay. And this is usually the deal breaker when people want to work with me, because I tell them like this. I say, listen, we're created to be in alignment. So even when you're not doing anything, you're still doing something. So you can choose to stay in agreement and alignment with where you are and be
Mm,
frustrated and continue to repeat those cycles, or you can mentally begin to prepare yourself so that you don't mishandle what you want.
mm,
You're going to be in alignment. Which alignment are you going to choose?
true.
It's a matter of choice. Because even when you're doing, because and one of the things that I tell them too, I say, 100 pennies is still $1.
Hmm.
Even if it means that your process takes a little longer, you got to see the value of where you're going. Do you see the value of where you're going, or are you still stuck at embracing where you are?
Mm,
Do you see the true value of where you're going? Okay, you want a husband, but what's the value of that? What's the weight of
mm,
that for you? Because if you're more comfortable with what's familiar, then baby, that's what you're going to align yourself with, whether you like it or not, because that's where your mindset is. That's the language that you speak every day. That's what you feed yourself with, what you're familiar with. So if you're not ready to make those changes and you don't see the value in it, you're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay right where you at.
so dealing with it's easier for one to hold on to the idea, the imagery of,
Mm-hmm.
or that perfect picture. That's what I'm hearing. Perfect picture, and hold on to that rather than I see it, and allow the imagery to drive them to completion,
Mm-hmm.
drive them to manifest, drive them for the outcome. So again, it's an exchange. It's an exchange, because seeing that picture, now you have to put yourself in that picture. What part do you
Come
play?
on.
What's your contribution? What role would you play? And what phase will you be at? How does that picture reflect me? How does it illustrate my life? That picture, that image.
When I do goal setting, Dr. McGarry, the first thing we do is a visualization exercise. Well,
Mm,
why is that? Because our brains are so powerful. The way they are wired is whatever we imagine, whatever we think of, we don't know it's fake until we tell it.
mm,
That's how our brains are wired.
mm,
I don't
mm,
know something is real or imagined until
mm.
I tell it it's fake or not.
Yes, yes,
And where
yes.
do we get the information for whether it's fake or not? Our historical data, our experiences, our life,
Mm,
things we know, et cetera, et cetera. But if I got the faith, right? If I'm doing the work on my soul to change my thinking, and I got the faith, baby, what I'm seeing is no longer just an idea or a concept. It's a reality that I'm calling forth to time now.
mm. But you said it, going back into historical data.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go back into historical data, we're dealing with disappointments,
Yeah.
broken promises, and what should have been. That too also causes how one to grieve, because
Yeah.
you're looking at, I should, let's go back to a state of completion. I should have finished college a long time ago. I should have been
Mhm.
done this job. I should have gotten stick with the scholarship. I should have, and I should have. And we have all of these narratives. Now, what we're doing again is puncturing the heart, puncturing the wound with
Mhm.
a sense of regret and guilt.
Yep.
And so, with broken promises, cause one to now be betrayed. And sometimes we could betray ourselves and not knowing it, just like he said, based on the historical data or the lies that we have told ourselves.
Mhm.
It might have been your truth for a moment, I would say season, but it's no longer your truth because times have changed. You are
Yep.
ever changing. So the storyline is changing. So, which narrative will you hold true? Which will be
Right.
your present day truth to now, I said, administer or be your line or your philosophy of your present day truth, the way you think,
Right.
the way you see it, view yourself. Interesting. Again, for those that are listening and for those that will be watching the replay, we're talking about grieving yet the past, your past self. We're tapping into knowing and not knowing that you were grieving. It could be grieving a loved one, a husband, a relationship, or even grieving yourself. How? By going over scenarios I should have, I could have, I would have,
Mhm.
and also the regrets that if I have done this 5 years ago, if I did this 20 years ago, I would have been in a better place, a much better place. I would have had that house, that car, and just literally going through those processes. So now you're grieving the old version of yourself that was what successful. You might have been flown in the money like honey, the abundance. I'm telling you, under that rain, that open heaven, and now because of bad choices. You lost your money. You went bankrupt. You had to file bankruptcy and all of these decisions that you had to make for that moment in time. Yes, now you have to go through the consequences of that decision, but now you are grieving that version of
Mhm.
yourself. And again, at the end of the day, you have to still deal with you. So it's you versus yourself. And the question stands, are you ready for you?
Yeah.
Are you ready for you? So, what steps based on one embracing who they are, what steps would you give yet your client or one going through the steps or process to become the greater version of themselves? What would be your advice?
So, as you were talking, one of the things that I thought about was, are we willing to acknowledge the loss?
Mm,
That it's a loss. And so, when we talk about grief, it comes in levels. So, the first level is whatever it is, whether it's like the primary loss, my job, my
come on.
whatever, my
Yeah.
car, my home, um, my my innocence. There's a primary loss.
Mm,
In the second step is to really identify, because what that's the loss, right?
yes.
What you're mourning is what that
Mm,
loss represents.
come on.
So are you what so the next thing is not just to acknowledge that this happened, right? I don't like it. That's radical acceptance. I don't like it, but it happened and I can't really do anything to change it, right? So the first is acknowledging the loss through radical acceptance, but the second is, okay, what did I really lose?
Mm,
What did I really lose?
come on.
So it wasn't just the house, it safety, security,
Mm,
what it meant because I worked so hard to get it on my own.
stability.
Stability, right? It's
Mm,
really taking the time to really, and that's what we talk when we talk about
mm,
processing. It's not just about processing the content, what it is. We got to put it in its proper context.
yes.
So identify the loss, right?
Mm,
Acknowledge it through radical acceptance, and then identify, what does this really mean? What does this really mean to me? When I moved from Ohio to where I am now, I grieved. Oh, I didn't even realize I was grieving, Dr. McGarry. I wasn't even realizing I was grieving. And I'm just walking around frustrated, mad, pissed off. Like everybody catching smoke. And I'm like, what is going on? And the Lord was like, grieve.
Mm.
And I cried and I cried and I cried because things did not look the way that I thought he said it was going to look when I got here. And so I had to sit down with myself and
Mm.
say, okay, I lost the house, got into a car accident. Well, I didn't lose my home. I left because the Lord told me to. So I'm following the Lord. Then I get here, I lose my car. I'm like, there's nothing is happening the way I thought it was going to happen. And I had to
Mm.
look at, okay, what I'm really grieving is the things that Tahkyra got on her own through her merit, through her intellect. Yes, the Lord provided, but that was really more about me.
Mm.
And then when I did that work, I realized I didn't really trust God.
Mm.
And so then there was a grieving process that engaged me learning again, for real this time, what it means for me to trust God as Tahkyra, as broken as I am. Not the Tahkyra that I want to be 15 years from now, 5 years from now, a year from now. I'm talking about right now. What does it mean for Tahkyra to trust God right where she is right now in my true authenticity? And authenticity
Yeah.
ain't about being perfect. It ain't about being there or arriving to any destination. It's really about, can I accept who I am right here in the here and now?
Mm.
And so when you are grieving, it's messy. It's not pretty. It's not, you can't put a,
Mm.
it's a messy process with a beautiful product at the end.
Mm. Beautiful product at the end. And also, what came to mind was when we're thinking that we are a failure because of decisions made, or and then you have, based on the standard or the structure of your family, and now you're not living up to that expectation, and then
Whew.
you start feeling like a failure, then now
Mm-hmm.
you are grieving that version, that one that achieved, that overachiever. Now you're tapping back into your childhood, you're tapping back into your young adulthood, and
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at that. Now I'm also hearing, for those that are now in pain or dealing with disability or agonizing because something happened, life happened, and now it's affecting your health, the way you're processing. It could be that one day you were moving with mobility, and now you have to walk a little bit slower, and now you're dealing with the pain, and now you're on meds, and now you're regretting. And again, that too is tapping into the old version, grieving the
Mm-hmm.
existence, the fluidity of you again. So we have to go back to adapting and adjusting
Mm-hmm.
to that version of you. And how can I live, how can I exist, and how can I thrive, and how can I go from here, how can I grow from here. So I get it, I understand, because I was at work one day, and I was just having God. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in Puerto Rico. That's where I want to live. But you sent me here because you said that there's an assignment, and I've always done what you want me to do. And when I was just going, you know how we do it. I'm telling on me because I'm one like, God, you said. Now
Yeah.
you said, and right after I was done, he said, "Are you done?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, you're grieving. And I didn't know. At that point, I'm one always researching what? Google. What? What I had to do with that? And after I got still enough, I heard the Spirit of the Lord said, I am trying to rebuild your life, but I miss the purpose. I miss
Mm.
the alignment of time. I miss what God was doing in the uprooting, because I wanted to be at point B in Caribbean. And he said, I want you here. Just do what you have. And I'm like, for how long? And I'm saying that, I'm being real, because a lot of us are like, for how long? How much longer do I have to do this? I've obeyed. I've turned my
Woo.
plate down. I've sown my seed. I have done this. God, I have done everything that you have asked me to do. I have done it. But yet I am still suffering. I am still in pain. When are they going to stop talking about me? When are they going to stop doing this? How much more do I have to go through? What I've let go. I've done. I really wanted to knock them out, but I couldn't. How much? All of this we have to go through in a sense of
Mm-hmm.
self-disciplinary, self-mastery, to becoming that other
Mm-hmm.
version of ourselves at the point where we're being sane and not losing our mind, because we don't understand the processing of what God is doing. And what he's doing is pulling out of dormancy what's hidden. And so with that, it's what's in dormancy now have to come to the forefront as a reservoir, because
Mm-hmm.
we have been in some places, truth be told, sometimes we tiptoe in the church and hide in the back pew because we don't want them to see us. We don't want them, and we hide in life. We hide in life, and they see us like the elephant in the room. They see you and come tell you, come to the forefront, and you're like, for what? I'm just in the back, chill mode. I'm one always in the back, but the world
I'm
see
good back there.
you are the light in a dark place.
Right.
You illuminate dark places. So it don't matter what you're going through, broken and all creation still sees, know, recognize who you are, and they will send someone to you, even in the day you're having a bad day, bad attitude. What do you want? And that slight yet soft conversation will break and or humble you. And now you have to contribute to God's creation, somebody else, despite what you're going through, broken and all,
Mm-hmm.
just so he could cause you to see and recognize you are purposeful, you are significant. So holding on to who you are, grieving, how do one let go, especially when that pain was your language, it was your eyes, it was your sight, it gave you life. Matter of fact, that pain caused you and tell you what to dress, what to wear. Why? Because it was part of your gear.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to strip. So how do one let go? We talk about changing the mind, thought process, but how do one let go of that husband that broke him? That sister girl, sister, family members. How do one let go of the agony that torments the mind, torments the soul?
Mm-hmm. So before we go there, when you said purposeful, I saw it two ways.
Mm,
Purposeful, like being in purpose,
mm,
but then full, like purpose, full, like
mm.
you yourself, the body,
Yes.
the creation is full of
Mm,
purpose to be purposeful. And I think it ties into the process of that letting go. One of the tasks
mm,
of grief is called investing in a new reality.
mm,
Investing
mm,
in a new reality.
mhm.
And so while you accept it, while you acknowledge it, while you can acknowledge the whole list and litany of different experiences that you've been through and how you waited on God and how you trusted God and you prayed and you fasted and you see it, God bless everybody else but you, right? All of those experiences, while you still going through all of that, stay in your 8.5, right? Not B, not A, your
Yes.
8.5. Stay
Mhm.
in your process because the
Mm.
process is teaching you what the reality to expect is.
Come.
So when we try to abort and get away from the process,
Mm.
what we end up doing is putting them hits out on our purpose, putting a hit out on my destiny.
No, no,
I
go
ain't
back when you
never.
said that. You got to go back on the hit on the destiny, and for you got to elaborate on that.
Those
Elaborate on
so the things that we tell ourselves that aren't in
that.
alignment with what God said. How you gonna be full of purpose to be in purpose, but you writing contracts that's a hit on your purpose because you won't acknowledge your process. You won't
Mm,
acknowledge the pain. You won't accept that it happened. A lot of y'all want to talk about letting it go, baby. You got to accept that it happened first. You can't let
come
go of
on,
nothing that you ain't took
come
a hold
on,
to.
come on. Mm. All of it except all, not some, not in
All,
part.
all of it. Not the parts that are easier. I mean, all of it. Because please believe that there are some things that happened to me that it took therapy, it took Jesus, it took mentorship for me to fully accept that it happened. Because if I'm honest in my book, I talk about it in my book, Let Her Grow.
Mm,
I was raped. And I felt like I did everything right.
mm.
Everything right. And it still happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And so I resolved in myself. I said, you know what? The shame of it,
Mm,
the embarrassment, the humiliation, all of that. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. God, you said I'm supposed to know. I wrote a contract and a hit out on myself, on my purpose. And if I didn't acknowledge and accept that it happened, even though I did not want it to, I didn't ask for it, it wasn't my fault. I had to learn a new language to break the covenant. Woo! To break the covenant I came into agreement with because of my pain. That's what I mean when you put a hit out on your purpose. Too many of us have come into a covenant agreement with our pain. That's the hit on your purpose.
Come on.
That's the hit on your destiny. Because you don't want to let that go. Baby, it happened. I'm sorry that it happened. It should have never happened. Even if you yourself know you did some stuff you ain't had no business doing, doesn't matter. It happened. Not to reduce or take away or diminish how much it hurt. But I can choose to sit in the hurt and keep literally mentally slinging arrows at my purpose because I don't want to move forward from the hurt. Because it means I won't know who I am if I don't sit in that pain, if I don't sit in my misery, if I don't sit in that truth. Well, you're not sitting in truth, you're sitting in trauma. The truth is,
come on,
it happened.
Yes.
The truth is that God saw the day of my healing, the day it happened. And the longer I keep staying in this time loop, I can't get to the day of healing He ordained for me the moment it happened.
Yes.
So let go. Letting go doesn't just mean that you're forgetting about what happened. No, you're releasing yourself from the power of that experience. And you're saying, I'm willing to invest in the reality that I know I deserve, the reality that God said I should have, and the reality that I know I should have.
Yes.
I'm breaking the covenant with my trauma.
And forgive yourself.
And I'm forgiving me. Shame is not my portion. Jealousy is not my portion. Rejection is not my portion. Humiliation and embarrassment is not my portion. Depression and anger is not my portion. Comparing myself is not my portion. Living as an imposter in my own life is not my portion.
Come on.
That's not it. So what truth are you going to listen to? What truth?
What came to me was, well, we call it self-sabotage. But what came to me was changing the rules of engagement.
Yes, yes.
Because we could give a strategy for someone else and what they're doing and how to maneuver. And we could pray and bombard heaven, I tell you, and do this and do that. But when it comes to us, we then have to now apply the principle that has been working since the ancient of days to now us, because we are again still part of God's creation. So we have to adjust to that by changing the rule of engagement.
Yes.
Like you said, canceling the contracts. That also goes to watching the way you speak over yourselves, watching the way you think, watching the way you act or react. And basically, you can use the word earlier, being triggered. Could that also be a memory being triggered will cause you to tap into an anger or a pain. And now you'd rather do something. And then you're like, I haven't felt that anger or that pain is in years. It took me down memory lane. It was triggered. Why? Because as long as you push it back and that dealing with it, that don't mean it's being healed. You just put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
As long as you're not facing that pain or that situation, it's going to keep coming at you a different face, same frequency, different language, but the same message.
Yeah.
To puncture and or torment you until you deal with that particular pain. What we keep putting on the shelf. I'll deal with that later. Now you do it. I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. So facing it, of course. And also facing it could be very well overwhelming, because now you got to deal with the rush of emotions, because now it's fresh, like it's happening like it was yesterday, though it's been
Hmm.
20 years. But when you start dealing with it, you'll be feeling overwhelmed. And now you're dealing
Yeah.
with the emotions, and now you have shortage of breath. Now you're dealing with the pain, the agony, like it was, yesterday. And so pace yourself when dealing
Yes.
or going through the process, to the journey of healing. Find ways to release yet your thought. It could very well be that you have a voice but no sound. So therefore you'll journal down that pain or that thoughts, and very well be, and now you're going to a place or a time of cleansing where the tears are running and it's unstoppable because you're now being purged because you've been holding on to that pain and like, I don't know what happened to me. Yet you're going through that process of healing. So
Hmm.
you're purging. Now you're going to the process of cleansing. And now you're finding yet your voice again. You're
Hmm.
tapping into your creativity. You're tapping into the dreamer. You're tapping into the fluidity of who you are. But you have got to find a way. Find a way that works for you. Because what works for me and Coach TK might not work for you. So find a way, a
Hmm.
strategy, a way that you could. It could be be in a room of quietness, stillness, listening to music, soft music by the beach or jazz music, something. Find a way. Go places, you know. Go take walks. Take walks in nature. Allow yourself to have that peace and tranquility to find and tap
Hmm.
into you so you could be
Yeah.
one with you, because we are so disconnected from ourselves. That's why we're having identity crisis when it comes to the body of Christ. So here it is now. I could believe God for what he's doing, but I can't believe God for who he has called me to be in the earth realm. Why? Because we're disconnected. So find ways to connect with you.
And it
Find
goes, but that was one of the first things I said, right? When we started this, like bringing it full circle, honestly, we've been so disconnected from ourselves because of our experiences. We got to learn to reconnect with us
because
and
if we
go through
don't, we'll
the
if we don't,
process.
we'll look for it in the pastor. We'll look for it in the leader. We'll look for ourselves in the intercessor. We'll look for it in our
Hmm.
husbands, and then husband look for himself in the wife because we're looking for a sense of identity. Because whatever we're dealing with or we're connected to, that is us. But in reality, what you do based on your function and your assignment is just your function, your duty, and your assignment. It still is not. That's not you. It's a part of what you're doing, but it's not you. So if you start dealing with you and who you are, you might very well see that you're going back way back into your young adulthood, teenage years. And what happened to
Hmm.
your adult life? Oh, you might say I'm a mother, I'm a teacher. Oh, and we know how we do it very well. I'm an apostle, I'm this. You're hiding behind your title. I'm going to say it like that. Again,
Yeah.
that's just your function in the earth realm based on the realm of religion. You're either yet still a mother and a wife. You have so many roles. But when we start dealing with the nature of who you are, the being, the essence, the core of you, will substance speaks or will ego speak? So when we're dealing with you, who will we talk to? What will we find? What sound will reverberate and what will be an echo or a sound of
Woo.
eternity? What will sound like because when the creator comes to visit you, he comes to hear an echo of himself. He communes with himself because he finds himself in you. So who are you?
Hmm. It's amazing because when I ask clients that question, well, who are you? They start telling me their functions and their roles, and I'm like, okay, well, that tells me what you do.
Yes.
So that tells me that you see yourself as a function. Who are you? What
Yes.
attributes, what traits, how would you describe yourself? Not based and rooted in your functions, not based and rooted in your skills, but who are you?
Mm, mm. And
Who
when
are
did we
you?
get disconnected? And why are we still malfunctioning?
Hmm.
Though we're connected to the source, we're still dysfunctional and we're still malfunctioning. Why, even though we're connected to the all being, the omnipotent one, why are we still? Is it based on the relationship or the foundation? And the thing about it is, we could communicate with the Father and still not communicate with Him because we're not giving Him our all. We just telling Him what we want to tell Him. So it's a sir, God, I need this done, this bill done, my car note, such and such and such. But when He start dealing with, I tell you, I know He have done it for me. There are times when the Father Himself will come and resuscitate your heart
Hmm.
and cause you to breathe. What will be your fragrance? what will be your sound? What will be your sound of worship? When I said your sound, your voice. David used to go off to himself and just worship, find God, him. And what does that encounter? Because we're still tapping into experiences. What does that encounter look like? Those moments, private moments, quiet moments, times of refreshing and serenity. A lot of us, we have so much noise in our head, and that noise, that busyness have been our
Mhm.
lifestyle for so long that when it
Mhm.
gets too quiet, we have to busy ourselves. Why? Because when you're quiet, you got to deal with the pain, you got to deal with what deals with you, what's pulling at your heart, and what's and needs your attention. And you don't want that pain, that agony, that issue to pull at your heart. So there you go, busying yourself again. And here we go, achieving another goal, another accolade, another degree, and anything to run from us. So we can have all these accolades and milestones. But when we start dealing with us, who, like you said, who are you? What would your answer or response be?
You got to disconnect from the sources that give you your function and connect to
Mm,
the true source. Because when you were saying that, I'm thinking, I'm like, that's real when I'm really connected to the source. But when I'm connected to the source of what gives me the function, the people, their ideas, their concepts, that's my source.
mm,
That's my lifeline. That's my source. And so even my worship is going to come from what I did, how I function, and not just in the true essence of a relationship with him,
mm.
not in the true essence of me just being me.
So as we come into a close, could you tell them how to redefine their relationship or the reality of who they are with themselves based on creating a new agreement with themselves?
Mm-hmm. Love yourself.
Mm,
It's that simple. Love yourself. The one, you do have to change your mindset. You do have to change how you think about you, your language.
mm,
It's not just the what you say and your self-talk, but what you do is also a language because there's a message that you leave with your actions.
mm,
So do the actions. It's everything that I'm doing. Say that I truly love myself. And I'm not talking about ego, but I'm talking about loving the me that I am. Because the Bible is very clear to love God and to love your neighbor as who? Yourself.
yourself.
So, how can I truly be effective in anything that God tells me to do and my purpose and anything if I don't love me? Love
Mm,
yourself. Take ownership of your
mm,
story. Stop letting your story run your life.
mm,
Your experiences run your life. You take ownership. The beautiful thing about when you are connected to the source, that's also the author. And he chooses to co author with you. So that means that you own the copyrights
that's
as
true.
much as he does. So take ownership of your story. Stop letting your story own you.
Mm,
Be vulnerable with yourself. Vulnerable. That's hard. But that's about that acceptance, that radical acceptance, that creating that, going into the vaults of your heart, the vaults
mm,
of your mind, and truly saying, like, this is where I am.
mm,
And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm not trying to make it something that it's not, but this is who I really am. And this is what I need help with.
mm.
Expect you to evolve. If
Mhm.
you ever get to that point where you're like, I know everything there is to know about me, baby, you've already messed up.
Yeah.
You are going to evolve. You are going to change. The more that you learn about yourself, the more you will learn about the areas you need to grow.
Yes.
So you're going, so if you didn't catch it, that's love, language, ownership, vulnerability in the vault, and an expectation of evolution. That's what it means for me to love myself. I'm watching my language. I'm taking ownership of my life. I'm being vulnerable with me. I go into the vault when I need to, and I exercise what it means for me to change. That's what I would say, Dr. McGarry.
I'll tell you. And safeguard your time with yourself. Safeguard your time.
Woo! Boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries. Boundaries.
Find some, learn some, get some.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Because if we keep allowing minds to restrict us of the time we're getting to know and learn ourselves, we will never be able to value who we are and be able to put a price on our services. I'm just saying, I mean, not go there, but be able, because you know who you are based on your worth and or your value. And then that's why when we don't know any better, we get ourselves or find ourselves in some situation because we don't know the value. And when you know your
Yeah.
value and your worth, you're like, I'm not doing that, I'm not touching it, no, we're not doing that today, because you know the worth and the value. And so thank you so much, Coach
Oh,
TK,
thank
for
you.
your, not only your expression but your wisdom and knowledge, and yet holding one accountable to yet knowing who they are, embracing who they are, and now walking in the purposeful or the fluidity of who they are. Thank you so much for that. Could you tell our guests how they could find you based on social
Yeah.
media?
Yes, on social media, you can find me. My uh, Instagram is Minding My Vision Official. On Facebook, I am, what is my Facebook is author Tahkyra Terrell. Um, and on TikTok is just Coach TK. And then my website is www.mindingmyvisionllc.com.
Okay. Do you have any upcoming courses and or events coming up?
I am. I have quite a few events coming up. I have an event in August with my cheetah. I'm so excited about that. um, there's an event then. I have another one in September in Detroit. That one is in person. Um, I have, and I'm also getting ready to start up my second cohort for my coaching program. Okay, so I'm looking. So if you would like to be a part of that program, just make sure that you schedule a consultation, and in that consultation, we'll go from there, and we'll talk about the program and what it is. It's called I'm changing the name. No, I'm not. It's Shift Happens. It's
Yes.
SHIFT happens.
Thank you so much for sharing the information.
Thank you.
And for those that, again, thank you so much for joining us. Again, for those that are listening or watching the replay, type hashtag replay. Again, don't forget to share the link, tell a friend of this. And if this segment has empowered you, it has impacted you, it has shifted your way of thinking, and it caused you to be in reflective mode, like, I really got to do something about who I am, who I'm meant and or created to be. Please reach out. Let us know. Your
Yes.
testimony will impact the life of another. And thank you so much for joining yet Soul Rehab, tapping into your transformational journey as we touch the crevices of your heart and the crevices of your soul, bringing about a life-changing what encounter. Thank you so much for joining us. Until our next segment. Okay. God bless you.